people think that being creative is something that you just are or you're not. And that's not true at all. Everything needs practice, and the more you do, the better at it you're going to become. A few months ago, I was reunited with my first ever art teacher when we were both doing a public trail together. Now, I remembered her really well, but she didn't remember me. It isn't that surprising. She would have taught a lot of students over the years, and I was only with her for 3 years. But I also think it's because I wasn't particularly a talented pupil of hers, so she wouldn't have remembered my work or anything. But then here we were, and we met up because both our designs had been chosen out of hundreds to take part in this art trail. And it made me think that it sort of reinforced my belief that I think that anybody can be creative. They just need a fantastic art teacher or somebody to give them some guidance and some pointers so that they have the confidence to find their own artistic identity. And that's what I'm going to share in this video. Early on in your journey, you might not really know what your artistic tastes are, but if you're a curious person and you've travelled and you go to museums and you read and you go to concerts, and all your other interests are going to influence you subconsciously without you really knowing it. So you've already got a kind of good base to work from. And all of this will have led subconsciously and fed into your own likes and dislikes. And when you first start making art, you're probably going to be really influenced by other art that you've looked at and other artists. Not only is this absolutely fine and normal, but there's a really good precedent for this, because a lot of the great artists, especially in Renaissance times, would start as apprentices, and they'd go to the studio of more established artists and they'd copy their work and they'd have to do backgrounds for them. So it's perfectly normal to do this. And I was in the Netherlands in the summer, and we went to a fantastic museum called the Kröller-Müller Museum, which has loads of 20th century art and a very big Van Gogh collection. And there were one or two by him that were done in a pointillist style, which is when lots of little dots are used to make up colour and light. And probably the most famous artist who did this was Georges Seurat. And the reason why Van Gogh painted like this is because he met Seurat and he found about this other technique that he didn't know about and thought, oh, that's quite exciting, I think I'll have a go at that. He only did a little bit in that and found it wasn't expressive enough for him, but it just shows that all the greats have been influenced by others, so there's absolutely no shame in being influenced, copying other people's styles, because when you do it, it's always going to have that element of you added into it. And remember that when you're learning anything, it's natural to be more cautious at the beginning. If you're learning to cook, say, you're going to probably follow a recipe slavishly or have somebody show you exactly what to do. And as you practice and get more confident, you're going to change some of the ingredients. Maybe you'll swap out the spices or decide to make a soup rather than the casserole. And then eventually you're going to do some cooking where you don't need recipes at all. So I think people think that being creative is something that you just are or you're not. And that's not true at all. Everything needs practice, and the more you do, the better at it you're going to become. And you should really think about it more of experimenting and playing, and try not to have an end point in mind, because that way you can become too perfectionist about it. And for a start, what you produce probably won't look like what's in your head, and that might make you feel disappointed. So think of it more as I say, playing as a child does art if you can. It's very hard to lose those judgments, but sort of try. You don't have to show anybody. We have such wonderful art materials available to us, and if you don't want to spend much money, you can even collect sticks and things and make your own mark making tools and use inks and pigments from the earth, or as I do, I make pigments and dyes now from plants, so it doesn't have to cost you a lot. But I think it's really important to get into the habit of making art and just practicing and experimenting. And you'll find that after a while, you might find that you're choosing particular colours more often, or particular medium, or you might prefer prints to painting. You might decide that you want to get into photography. The more you do, the more you're going to refine your own interests. And even try things that perhaps you don't think you would like. I mean, if anybody had said to me even 3 years ago that not only would I be making and editing videos and using animation and using my art in a sort of visual storytelling medium, I really wouldn't have believed them. But not only do I do it now, I really enjoy it, and it's sort of opened up doors for me as well. And as I say, the more you do, not only will you find what materials that you like, but you'll get to find what subjects you want to explore. And it could be that you want to tell a story with your art, or you want to process emotions, or you want to think about certain ideas. Or even, and I think this gets overlooked quite a lot, but this kind of inspires a lot of my art. You might just want to make something that's aesthetically pleasing to you, and that's just as valid as anything that's deep and meaningful. And it can be helpful, you don't have to show your art to anybody at all, but it can, when you're sort of getting a bit more honed and you perhaps want to start a sort of series of things, or you're thinking that you might make something as a gift for somebody else, it is quite useful to get somebody else's opinion. I still quite often will ask David, my other half, about something, particularly when I'm getting to the end of a picture or work, and I ask, it's not going to be hard, you can sort of lose your judgment a bit, and it's really useful to be able to just have somebody as a sounding board. But remember, your opinion is the really important one. And I want to finish with a couple of practical points. I'm very lucky that I've got this small studio to work in, so I can leave all my stuff out, which is great. But I did used to have just one end of a spare room, and you might just have a kitchen table or a corner somewhere, and it has to be cleared every evening to have your meal, or to, the kids have to use it for doing their homework at. Well, I find it really useful to I have these wire trays, and whatever project I'm working on, I have everything in that tray. And if I was working just a small space, I could have my session, and I would try and have sessions as often as you can so you get into the habit, and then it's easy to put under the table or put on one side, and then you can get it out again the next day. And my last point, I think, may be actually the most important of all, which is that if you've been working on something and you get a bit bogged down in it, you start losing your judgment, there's something that you just can't figure out why, step away from it. I think instinctively we know that's a good thing to do, but there's more and more evidence that shows that our brain is processing lots of things even when we're not doing them, and even when we're sleeping, which is why, you leave something overnight and you come back to it the next day and you kind of look at it with fresh eyes. So the science is sort of backing up our instincts on that. And one thing I find really helpful, I have to walk my dog every day, which I enjoy. It's lovely to be out in the fresh air and nature, but there's something about the rhythm of the walking that I think gets your brain sort of working in a slightly different way, and I often get my best ideas when I'm out walking. And I just want to say that although I do now have a strong identity for my art, after all, I have this channel and I have my website, and they're both called A Creative Garden, so I know that plants were an important inspiration and for material for me. But it was only when I did an exhibition earlier this year and I had to write a spiel for the website, which I never like. I hate those sort of really highfalutin things. Do you speak about yourself in the first person or the third person? I'm still not quite sure. But we were given some pointers to think about our art, and I found that really helped me sort of hone what it is, and I've realised it's not just the plants themselves, but how people have looked at them and studied them, and like the 19th century explorers who'd go around the world collecting plants, and then when they brought them back to this country, how they presented them and their collections, which is why I love Cabinets of Curiosity. And I've realised that sort of umbrella term of how people have looked at the natural world and plants in particular, covers nearly everything I do. Like the cyanotypes, which was an early form of photography when people were just trying to find a way to make permanent images. So that was really enlightening for me, and it's taken me all these years to actually really refine. So really, finding your creative voice isn't about perfection, it's about being authentic to yourself. Don't worry if you don't really know what it is, you're going to refine it over the years. The more you do, the more you evolve, the more influences you have, the more it helps crystallise what your own interests and tastes are. And eventually you'll be able to produce work that is personal to you and completely unique, and nobody else can do it but you. And then very finally, I just want to say a thank you to Caroline, my art teacher, who I met and had a coffee with just a couple of weeks ago, because she helped spark the creativity in me.